Welcome to the A-Dub Club, a podcast about sci-fi, fantasy, technology, pop culture, the internet, and general nerdery. There are three things that are important to know. One, we occasionally use swear words, but try to stay in the range of PG-13, or at least the kind of R that cool parents are fine with. Two, we may talk spoilers. In this episode, we talk about basically every major superhero movie released in the last 20 years, so be warned. And finally, three, most importantly, the 2016 M. Night Shyamalan movie Split is secretly a sequel to Unbreakable. With that out of the way, welcome to the Clubhouse. We have snacks. Welcome to the A-Dub Club. My name is Andrew Whipple.
I'm Alex Wade.
Here we are, once again, in our respective apartments in a global coronavirus pandemic. How are you doing? How are you holding up, given the everything of it all?
I'm living my life. I'm actually gonna be moving back to Seattle at the end of the month, which is exciting.
Hey, look at that. Look at that.
Yeah.
You're going to give my parents ideas. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about superheroes.
Possibly raccoons, maybe.
That's true. That's true. Entirely possibly that we'll talk about raccoons or trees. And this week's question is, what makes a superhero movie?
Yeah. People shooting laser beams out of their butthole. And podcast.
Indeed. That's the kind of trenchant analysis that you come to us for. Superhero movies. They're a thing, huh? They're really there. They're really out there doing their stuff.
Yeah. I just rewatched Iron Man in prep for this, and I think you watched a bit more in prep for this, right?
I pulled up. I did another like Denis Villeneuve in our Arrival episode where I was just like, all right, I'm stuck at home. I'm just gonna watch a fuck ton of stuff. It's the kind of thing where it's like, if we had more listeners of the podcast who cared, and or more people who followed me on Letterboxd, you could probably be able to reasonably triangulate when we have an episode topic coming up, because it's just like, oh, superhero movie after superhero movie after superhero movie for like the last 4 days. I watched a fair amount of stuff. But yeah, any first thoughts on what makes a superhero movie, or first things that we want to jump into?
I'd say first off, good and evil is a high level topic of like there's a pretty obvious good guy versus bad guy. Action movie is another high level point I'd like to make. Superpowers, those are important too, or some version of superpowers.
Yeah. It is a more modern archetype than
love movies,
fairy tales, or your King Arthurs, or your witches, or your wizards, or what have you.
You don't necessarily have superhero. Like Merlin isn't a superhero, right?
Yeah.
Or King Arthur, for that matter, isn't a superhero. Or I don't know, Captain Hook, not Captain Hook, but Peter Pan isn't a superhero.
Yeah.
It's actually I want to get into that. Why isn't Peter Pan a superhero?
Huh. That is interesting. Yeah, because
he does have magical powers, right?
Yeah.
He can fly, and he's a leader of the Lost Boys.
He fights a villain, and truthfully, Captain Hook, like if you just transplanted Captain Hook into a comic book, you could see Captain Hook being a comic book villain, because he's a pirate with a hook for a hand. That's very comic booky.
I guess even in other modern day stuff, like my favorite TV show, Avatar: The Last Airbender, I wouldn't consider Avatar a superhero.
Yeah.
But he has magical powers and is like the chosen saved one and the good guy who's going up against evil.
Yeah. I was also thinking, as you were saying that, like when you said modern, it made me think of the Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah.
There is very little on the surface that distinguishes Ethan Hunt from like Captain America or from Batman when he's not wearing a big bat suit. And yet, like, the Mission Impossible movies aren't really superhero movies. And yeah. What is it? What is it that makes a superhero a superhero?
I think there's that fine line because, like, I don't know of them, but I know there are other superheroes that do not have any other powers besides they're just like really talented gymnasts who are basically
Yeah.
Batman without a suit on, but um, they still go around and fight crime and stuff like that, right?
So, I mean, some of it, I think definitely this is kind of a cop out answer, but I think some of it is if Mission Impossible movies were instead a comic book that was being released by Marvel with no actual changes to them. I think there still would be some differences that would feel different from like sort of classical archetypal superheroes, but you would like if the Mission Impossible movies were adaptations of a Mission Impossible comic book that was released by
Yeah.
Marvel or DC, then maybe you'd feel more like, oh, these are superheroes. So I think some of it is just like the context that they're in, that like if Marvel made a Peter Pan movie, then actually, especially if you think about like Thor is a superhero, but he's a superhero that is a
Greek
Norse god.
Yeah.
Actually, to your point, I'm pretty sure Merlin is a character and maybe is a villain in either a DC or some Marvel comics at some weird point in like the 60s and 70s when everything was getting strange.
Interesting.
I haven't read a ton of comics, but I feel like I remember Merlin being a character in like one of those Lego Marvel superheroes games or something like that.
Yeah. Um. So I think for me, what makes a bit difference with like Ethan Hunt versus a different kind of superhero is I think the arc of someone and the
Hmm.
how they start to deal with that, right? Like a superhero is tested, like their morale or their morals are tested, or they have to make judgment calls outside of their action movie stuff, right? Like Batman, he never kills, right? But
Hmm.
Joker comes along and it's like it's probably best if he just kills him, right? But Batman is put to the test there. Versus Ethan Hunt, um, yeah, he's technically been put to the test morally in his Mission Possibles, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like it feels different.
And you know what? Something actually, now that I'm thinking about it,
Like Jason Bourne.
is yeah. Well, I think a thing that is starting to make this disambiguation difficult is the fact that, especially nowadays, with superhero movies being the dominant genre of blockbuster,
Yeah.
more and more, I think you're seeing superhero characters being put into other genres. And so, like, it's like, what is the difference between Captain America, Winter Soldier, and a Mission Impossible movie? It's that one of them stars Captain America. And it's even like Captain America's suit doesn't look very Captain America-y. A lot of the movie, he's out in like normal ass spy clothes. But I think a big part of that is because Captain America: The Winter Soldier is made to feel like a Mission Impossible movie, just starring a superhero.
Interesting.
Like Iron Man 3 is kind of just a Shane Black movie, but with a superhero in the center of it. Yeah, where do you draw that line when the superhero genre has co-opted other genres within it? On the one hand, that suggests then that there is still something superhero-y about them because they still feel like their own separate thing. But at the same time, it makes it harder and harder to draw a meaningful or create a definition that is necessary and sufficient such that you can like say, this is a superhero movie, but this isn't, and have that feel like a clean break.
Yeah.
It's like the fucking hot dog. Is a hot dog a sandwich question?
Oh God, it's a hard question.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, for me, like the Bourne series, right? That is on that line for me a lot more so than Mission Impossible.
Interesting.
Mainly because I feel like Jason Bourne versus Ethan Hunt is a better character in general. um,
Okay.
and Ethan Hunt is just like I'm the badass spy guy versus Jason Bourne feel like he has a personality.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my opinion of Tom Cruise in general versus Matt Damon. So like but I feel like that is an important aspect of it is having a personality and having a I don't know, having something within your character that is tested throughout the movie at some
Hmm.
point in time during the movie.
I was gonna say with the have a personality thing, I was gonna toss you back a Man of Steel and see how you reacted to that. But then you pulled back out the character being tested, and I think that yeah. Well, even that, it's interesting because again, I wish I read more comic books. Maybe that definitely 100% feels like an archetype of the superhero movie, that it's like, oh, this is their biggest challenge yet, and it's going to test something that gets to the core of them, or at least that's what the good ones do. There isn't, we, for better and for worse, we don't have, and I think particularly because these are big blockbuster movies, we don't have the version of a superhero movie that is the, oh, this is just a day in the life where I'm just happening to fight this one particular villain. We don't have the equivalent of like an episode of the Batman animated TV series where it's just like, all right, this is just another person that, it's a challenge for Batman to figure out how to solve this, but it's not pushing him to the limit or testing something fundamental about his character in the way that you would in TV, and I presume would in more like middle of an arc issue of comics.
Yeah,
But the movies do take more of that, like, no, this is the big fundamental test.
And it can still have those normal action movie moments without being tested. Like, it can just be, oh, Batman has to go save the day. Like, it's just, if it's always and only that, then it's not, I don't know, then there's nothing interesting about it. Well, I mean, I guess we're not trying to talk about the quality of a movie, right? So whether or not it's interesting or relevant.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that does also throw things in. It's like, if the idea is more around like what makes a superhero movie, then even a bad superhero movie can tell you something about the inherent superhero-iness of it.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen Green Lantern, but like Green Lantern or Man of Steel or Justice League, it's like those are superhero movies. Suicide Squad is a superhero movie, even though it's just fucking bad.
Is Suicide Squad a superhero movie?
I feel like yes. I think so. I mean, the characters are super villains, but they're, well, ignoring the fact that it's incompetently made, it is an attempt at doing a pretty, like, for Harley Quinn and Deadshot in particular, their arc feels like an attempt at doing the superhero team up kind of Avengers-y storyline, just again incompetently made.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
But it is an Oscar winner because it won for makeup, which is really great because I get to say Oscar-winning film, Suicide Squad.
Oh, those poor fanboys.
Though that is interesting also to think about, like, so I made a list because I love to make fucking lists of, you know, oh, what are my favorite and what do I think are the best superhero movies. And now that I'm looking at some of this list, one of the ones on there is the new Birds of Prey movie from earlier this year.
I gotta see that.
And that is one that, now that I'm thinking about it, like, it feels like it's a superhero movie, but it feels like it's a superhero movie because it's starring characters from superhero movies. And definitely, you know, still has bits and beats and plot lines that are similar to some of these, but like, it is also a different tone and a different vibe. And again, it's villains, though villains doing something heroic, or at least medium heroic. And I don't know, that makes it feel it is. I think the movie is designed to be sort of on the edge of, in this world where superhero is the dominant genre, here's us playing with that form and doing something, you know, kind of on the sidelines. But is it so much on the sidelines that it ceases to become a superhero movie? Then I don't know.
Yeah, I have to see that movie, so I'm not really sure. But
my very brief pitch that I may cut out or put at the end is that if you, like me, are someone who apparently is so invested in the character of Harley Quinn that the first time I saw the Suicide Squad trailer, I completely unprompted teared up at the sight of, oh my God, that's a live action Harley Quinn, which left me shocked and surprised at the fact that I was doing this in my college dorm, watching a YouTube trailer for Suicide Squad. If you're someone like me, then you're going to fucking love Birds of Prey. And if you're someone who is not quite as enamored with Harley Quinn as a character, and or get at all annoyed with Harley Quinn as a character, you're going to fucking hate the movie. because
Okay.
it is very much a Harley Quinn movie, for better and for worse.
Okay. I'll watch it. I need to. I keep getting advertised for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, if you're thinking about like Birds of Prey and Suicide Squad in these movies that are they just as much as they take from other superhero movies, they also take from like heist movies and like Inception or Ocean's 11 or things like that. And it's like, okay, are they heist movies with superheroes or are they superhero movies with heisty elements?
Yeah.
Ant-Man, I guess, is an even better example of that. It's like Ant-Man really is a heist movie that, but it also clearly stars a superhero in the center of it. So yeah, it's interesting. This like playing with genre, and particularly the fact that superhero movies are playing with other genres.
Yeah.
It is one of the most exciting parts of like I fucking love when a superhero movie feels like it's in another genre. But
I really like that. That's been my favorite thing about new superhero movies is they're starting to be just like, oh, this plus another genre, and like that's what it is, right? Like
yeah,
even the culmination of all superhero movies of like Endgame felt this like epic saga of I don't know. It was an epic, huge saga of worldwide proportions, kind of like what felt, in my opinion, like Lord of the Rings and the grandioseness of that, right? Which is, frankly, something that superhero movies haven't exactly done before, at least to that level. Well, maybe in the previous Infinity War. In Infinity War, it
yeah,
absolutely did that. So I guess those two are my examples of like those interesting genre blending things for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I guess kind of a new question. What makes a superhero movie good?
Ooh, ooh, okay. I mean, okay. Cheesy, easy first answer. We can just knock it out of the way. It's just got to be a fucking good movie. Like,
Oh
if it's not a good
yeah.
movie, then it's not a good movie. I mean, there is still some element of like with any sort of genre thing of like, okay, it's a bad movie, a bad horror movie, but it's scary and it like delivered on a couple scares, so it's good for a horror movie, or it's like or like a comedy that's mostly dumb but still made you laugh.
Yeah.
So I think there's some element of like with any action movie where it can be a not great movie but have great action scenes that will, at least make it worth watching the movie. And you could kind of say, oh well, in that case it was a good superhero movie even if it was a bad movie. But I think there's enough, especially now, there are enough genuinely great movies that are also superhero movies that like you don't have to grade on a curve as much.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the cop out. any
Yeah.
any real thoughts about what makes a good superhero movie other than being a good movie?
Other than just being a good movie, I do think that they're I don't know, kind of some of those base elements do kind of need to be there. So like the test, I think is a crucial part. If it doesn't have a test to it, then I don't know if it's like if I necessarily enjoy it as a superhero movie. Like um, like what's the point of having a hero if they aren't put to the test? That's the whole point, is that they are better and greater than us. So
Mm.
if we can't see that besides outside of the realm of like, oh, they can shoot lasers out of their eyes, then it's not really interesting to see, you know?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think there's some also level of like, for the really great ones, I'm not just coming here to see the spectacle. I'm coming to see some sort of character progression or some sort of, this is me going to be annoying and like, oh, I took a film studies class. But in one of my screenwriting classes, was it a screenwriting class or a creative writing class? Either way,
Yeah.
a thing that sort of stuck with me was a professor saying, critiquing someone's story and saying like, is this the most interesting day of this character's life?
Yeah.
And then the student said no, this is just a normal day. And he was like, okay, well, why aren't you telling me the story of the most interesting day of their life? Because if it's the most interesting, that's the one I'm going to want to read. And I think a similar version of that, where it's like, okay, if I just want to watch the cool action sequence, I can go watch action sequences on YouTube.
Yeah.
But if I want to sit down and watch an actually great movie, I want this to be the most interesting or the most consequential part of this character's life. And that, in the case of someone who's fighting for good against evil, that probably involves some sort of test of
Morality.
of something or another.
Yeah. And that's, I don't know, important, crucial bit. Additionally, it's funny that you mentioned that, because like one of one of my favorite movies, Stranger Than Fiction, is about this guy who lives a very normal life. Like that's the whole point of like the intro sequence is talking about how fucking normal everything he does is. But even that ends with it's like, oh, and then after we see all this boring stuff, now it's showing the interesting stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen that movie, but
It's very good.
it'll be good.
Girl.
Nice. Yeah. I think along those lines, I also, as I'm looking at like what are the movies that I gravitate the most towards, they are ones that beyond like I think I agree with that idea of like there is some sort of test or some sort of challenge and it is some sort of personal test or challenge, but like there needs to be some sort of actual like they need to be fucking characters. They can't just be like people that are punching people. It's like there needs to be some, and ideally like the I guess like literally with any good well constructed movie, especially any genre movie, and actually same thing we were talking about with Magic whatever last episode, where you're telling a story and the way you've constructed the story, the way you've constructed their powers or the antagonist or the world that they're in or the stakes of the fight that's happening is all around like getting at whatever that central story and central conflict is.
Yeah. Something else that I wanted to bring up was the way how there are superhero movies out now that are almost mocking the genre in a sense. So like the first thing that comes to mind for me is Deadpool, and then additionally, this is like way earlier, Mystery Men, if you ever remember.
Ooh, I hear people talk about that movie all the fucking time, and I've never seen it. But it's a big like, it's a big seems like a big sleeper. Didn't get credit that it deserved back in the day, kind of film.
So it was. I just googled it. It was a 1999 movie, starring Ben Stiller and a couple of other famous people. And it was all about how there's like this one main superhero guy who like basically gets killed very, very early on. And then there's another group of superheroes who are kind of like C-list superheroes who are trying to make a superhero team so that they can go and defeat the supervillain guy. And that's the whole point of the movie is kind of mocking superhero movies in a sense and superhero genre. But this is 1999 before any of the current like huge superhero movies had come out. It's a very hilarious movie.
Similar story. I haven't seen Mystery Men, but I do want to watch it. A movie that on my top 10 list, I did actually put this on there, and I understand if people are going to be like, "What the fuck?" But I genuinely think it's one of the best, my favorite movies I've ever seen. Sky High, from 2005. I think similar sort of boat of it is a comedy through and through. It's a high school comedy that uses the trappings of superheroes to like be its metaphor and be its hook and things like that. I think it does it exceptionally well. But I think same sort of thing that you wonder, because it came out in 2005, so it was very much using the iconography to a lesser extent of like the Spider-Man movies, but really of like Saturday morning cartoons and superhero comics and stuff like that. That like if a movie like this came out in the 2010s and when superheroes are the big thing in the world and that's like all blockbusters are superhero movies, would a movie like this have done better than it did in like just missing the boat in the same way that maybe Mystery Men, where it's like, oh, you're making fun of the thing, but you're making fun of the thing that like you don't even know how big it's going to get in 10 years.
Yeah. Which I think the kind of current version of that is Deadpool, right?
Yeah, totally.
But even Deadpool is still basically a superhero movie. Like, I don't know. I just rewatched Iron Man right now, and even though in Deadpool there's a lot of mocking of superheroes in general, he's still just like almost the quintessential superhero. He's a good guy. He goes out to save people, you know, for good and stuff, right? Like, maybe he doesn't.
I haven't actually seen the Deadpool movies, but I gravitate towards that, I think, personally, when I think about, movies that are in a genre that are, I prefer the movies, or rather, I don't love as much, unless they're really, really good, the movies that are purely making fun of a genre, that are just like, we're just going to rip this to shreds.
Yeah.
Like this, I mean, they're kind of punching bags, but like the scary movies or other sort of Zucker Brothers movies like that. The movies that I love are Take a Shot, 8 Up Club Bingo. I'm talking about Scream. Scream, that's like, it's a lot of it is making fun of slasher movies. There's a whole like constantly characters are making fun of like dumb tropes of slasher movies, some of which Wes Craven even helped create. But then at the same time, it's a really fucking scary and like it does a really good job at being an actual slasher movie. And I think that Deadpool seems like that. I think all like other movies like Into the Spiderverse or The Incredibles or movies or Guardians of the Galaxy, movies that kind of make fun, kind of play with, or kind of are winking at the fact that, or Thor Ragnarok, actually another example, that kind of wink at the fact that they're superhero movies or are self-aware and call them out. At the same time, they do all the shit that you need a superhero movie to do, and do it well.
Yeah.
And I always really like that better, of like, you're smart enough to be able to call out and comment on a genre, but you're also good enough at the genre that you're able to do it well.
I think that's like satire, right? Like I don't think Deadpool is at the level of satire, but it is like getting there, you know? Yeah. I don't think there's, but Mystery Men for sure is almost straight up satire. Like,
sure,
it's mocking superheroes for sure. I think now would be another great time for another movie like that, which unfortunately isn't going to happen anytime soon. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. But
yeah. It's fucking wild just to think about the fact that like we're now a full decade into like superheroes being the dominant blockbuster genre. I mean, we still have like, it is still a decade where there's big Star Wars movies and big Jurassic Park movies and big Mission Impossible movies, but like the story of the 2010s in blockbuster cinema, at least, is Marvel movies and the failure of DC movies.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been good. Like I'm glad for it. I know there are a lot of people who, especially, I just rewatched the Golden Globes, I think, with Ricky Gervais as the head. And he was talking about, it's like, oh, everything now is just people in tights and everyone's doing steroids, and that's what it is. That's what people call acting these days. I'm like, okay, that's just flippant, and like, you just want it to be from the good times of old, apparently, or whatever. It's like, no, it's just a new genre that has been dominating the world. And yeah, it's come out with a lot of fluff and bullshit, as every popular thing does, but it's come out with a lot of great stuff too, you know?
Yeah, and I think there is an element of there is a fair critique of modern movie making in the fact that it is so splintered between either you make a giant blockbuster or you make small, no budget indie movies, and there kind of isn't anything in between, other than, very rarely you can get something more mid-budget made and or get it successful, but it's probably more likely to be successful on streaming than it will be in theaters. And I think the coronavirus and theaters being closed is probably going to only hasten that more, that it's like, if it's dangerous to go out to theaters, you're probably only going to go out to theaters for the things you need to see in a theaters, which means like it'll probably be even more of a divide between all the movies you watch at home on Netflix or on iTunes, and then the big superhero blockbuster movies you watch in the theaters. I think that I don't know. This is just my intuition that it's not something you really can put at the feet of superhero movies specifically. It's more that superhero movies are the dominant form of blockbuster, and blockbusters overall are the dominant form of theater going entertainment, at least.
Yeah.
And though also at the same time, like, maybe some of it is because Kevin Feige is a fucking genius at doing what he does. And like, if there hadn't been a company as successful as Marvel, maybe superheroes at least wouldn't be as dominant as they are now, and or franchises and blockbusters wouldn't be as dominant. But I don't know. It's hard to chicken and the egg that.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's cool.
What was there anything that you took out? So you rewatched Iron Man this week?
Yeah.
The first one?
This morning.
Was there anything interesting that you took out of that? Or anything that made you think about? Slash, I guess, what was the experience of rewatching the movie that started this whole Marvel thing?
Yeah.
12 years after the fact?
it held up for one thing. Still very good. I mean, I enjoyed it. And I liked it again. You know, it's a great movie. The one thing I did notice about it though was it didn't have the stereotypical. I don't know, the stereotypical Marvel arc that you see in all of the other movies of the enemy being good in any way. Like,
Oh, interesting.
you told me this once about how in all the movies, like, oh, the enemy, they have some good bent on them, right? Like in I'm trying to think of like literally any, like Black Panther, for example, the bad guy, he just wanted what was best for his people, right? I think,
Yeah.
or if you can give another example, like,
I mean, I'm
go
trying to
for it.
think. Yeah. I mean, Black Panther is the great example of that, and I think Black Panther does it way more than literally any other movie in the Marvel in
Sure,
Marvel
but
land
it's
does.
a touch in
But
every other movie.
it's the what? Yes, what's the line? The villain doesn't think they're a villain
Yes,
thing.
that is not true at all in this movie. Like
Yeah,
Obadiah, he's
that's Jeff Bridges, right?
yes, Jeff Bridges. He was the bad guy. Like, sure, he was hiding that he was the bad guy for a while, but like, he was for sure the bad guy. He had been selling arms and missiles to like literal terrorists,
Yeah.
basically ISIS, and had been doing that for a while. And like, yeah,
An interesting thing that I haven't thought about. So I haven't seen. I did rewatch all the Marvel movies 3 years ago, I guess. But I haven't seen Iron Man since then. Interesting to think about. It's almost kind of the inversion that it's not that Obadiah is a guy who thinks he's doing good and then but is misguided for whatever reason.
yeah,
It's almost like him and Tony Stark are the same at the beginning of the movie, and then the journey is Tony Stark learning to be like, oh shit, I was bad when we
yeah.
started the movie and now I need to not be.
That's absolutely what it was, 100%.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
which is cool. And like, it was a very good movie. I really enjoyed it
yeah.
again. You know,
Yeah, I should rewatch that. It is wild that what the thing I remembered when I rewatched it a few years back was being struck by how small it feels in comparison to the other Marvel movies, and how like from a visual style it doesn't feel like um it doesn't look the same that like later Marvel movies did once they like nailed it down and figured out what the house style was. Interestingly, I think Iron Man 2 was the one that I saw that was like, this is the first one that looks like a Marvel movie, even though the movie fucking sucks, but has so many good bits to it and threads to it that I'm like, I feel bad. It's same with Age of Ultron, is that Age of Ultron and Iron Man 2 are the ones that are like, there's so many good threads and introductions of characters that I love in these movies. It sucks that the movies themselves are bad. Anyway,
yeah,
but I was struck by that. I was struck by the fact that like, holy fucking shit, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark is like
perfect.
incredible
Yeah,
performance.
that was honestly my favorite part. Is just Robert Downey Jr. I'm excited to see what he does. You know, like, and when I say that, I
Go
mean
watch Doolittle.
specifically. No, fuck. You didn't say. I didn't hear that. You go to like.
Doolittle. Hey, Doolittle Pod. Like and subscribe if you want us to do a Doolittle Pod for our next episode.
If we get one email that tells us to watch Doctor Doolittle, then we'll
Yeah.
do it.
Excuse you. Get it right. It's Doolittle, not no doctor.
Okay, Doolittle.
No doctor in
Sorry.
the title. Gotta respect the branding.
Yeah, if we
God,
get one single tweet or email about it, then we'll
the
do it.
fact the fact that
Doesn't matter when you
was
listen
his
to it.
fucking blank check move after being in a
God,
million Marvel movies and having more money than God and being able to get literally any movie made that he wanted. Like, I'm sure he could have waved his hand in any single movie that he decided to
yeah.
sign on to as his post Endgame follow up would get made, and he does fucking Doolittle.
I honestly think that might have been a very good decision, actually, in the sense of like tanking expectations so that
Oh.
you have a bigger license after, like Daniel Radcliffe, for example, right? Like
Yeah.
he could have gone on to do huge another franchise, another interesting huge thing of some kind, right? And he chose to do small indie shit. Well, he's a completely different situation. He's not trying to like tank his reputation, but he just goes does whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah. He's
For
he's in the like Robert Pattinson, who interestingly is going to
yeah,
be the Batman soon. So
yeah.
I'm stoked for whenever that
Oh, I'm so
eventually gets
excited for
to
that.
be able to start to resume shooting, and so probably 2025 or whenever that fucking thing
Yeah.
comes out. But yeah, like Robert Pattinson or Kristen Stewart that are they take their making more money than God in a franchise and then use it to do whatever the fuck they want.
That's my dream.
If only. If only.
Someday.
Let's see. Anything? The one other thing that so like I said, I watched a fuck ton of superhero movies over the last week, and in thinking through, okay, what are the best superhero movies? I rewatched The Dark Knight, and it's really fucking good. I mean, it's a very good movie. It has its flaws. The Hong Kong sequence is like, okay, we don't need this.
Sure.
It does totally.
Hey, that was very fun.
Yeah, it does totally lose steam, and I feel bad about it because like it is actually narratively and thematically really important, but it totally loses steam after the last Joker scene when it gets into the final chunk with Harvey and Gordon and stuff like that. But man, it is like I do find myself particularly watching the opening bank heist just probably every couple months I'll just pull it up on YouTube or pull up my copy of Dark Knight and just like, I'm just going to watch this opening scene and just be like, oh, holy shit. That's how you fucking open a movie. It is a total knockoff of Heat, which I finally saw for the first time last year.
Okay.
90s Michael Mann movie that Chris Nolan has explicitly said that was a huge inspiration for him. But it's a 90s Michael Mann crime thriller with Robert De Niro as a thief and Al Pacino as a cop, and they're cat and mousing. And it is basically, it's The Dark Knight, but without superheroes. Okay. But especially like some of the bank robbery scenes in that movie are like, oh, yeah. This is what Nolan was trying to do.
Which, that's fine.
It's a good movie. But the two that I kept sort of flip-flopping back and forth on which one I think is the best superhero movie of all time. Actually, okay, wait, before that, do you have any thought or opinion on what, if you were to pick, what is the best superhero movie or your favorite superhero movie if they are different?
Of all time?
Yeah. Putting you on the spot.
So I'm going to say one of three. And they're older ones. Well, relatively older. Well, actually, no, they're not all. So there's first off Raimi's first Spider-Man.
Yep.
Honestly, Iron Man.
Yeah.
Like that's why I chose to watch that one. Dark Knight, I really love Dark Knight, but I don't know. There's something about it that it just I don't like it as much as the other ones. I love it. It's fantastic, but it's just not one on my top 5 list. And
it is a movie. Sorry to interrupt briefly. It is also a movie that's like, oh, the thing about that movie is the Heath Ledger performance, and everything else is very solid.
Love that.
And it's just that that performance is what puts it over the edge. If anything puts it over the edge.
That's exactly. And like I that could be one of my top 5 superhero performances ever, or supervillain. Top 5 performances of someone in a superhero movie. Sure, maybe that's even top 1. Absolutely. Movie,
but
maybe
the
not.
movie, anyway, continue.
Or Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So my three were going to be with like Dark Knight as my number 3, but there's a gap between Dark Knight and then my 1 and 2. My number 2. And my number 1 and 2, I was going to keep flip-flopping back and forth between. This is where I have them right now, but it could change depending on the day. Number 2, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah!
Which I rewatched on Friday.
It's so good!
Holy fucking shit, that movie.
Every beat of that movie, like, crushes it.
Every beat is perfect. It almost feels weird to throw so much on this, but I guess it shouldn't because it is a key part of it. It's just like the way that fucking movie looks is unreal. It's incredible. It is and diving into how they did the animation of it, and it's all sorts of like, apparently they spent a year, 2 animators spent a year just getting 10 seconds of test footage that like was up to what Lord and Miller wanted, and like it's just like the way it looks like a comic book, the way it plays with like pseudo 3D stuff, but through the language of like printed stuff on comic paper, and it's unreal. The character animation, the way that each character has their own different animation style, it's unbelievable. And it does what I think my favorite superhero movies do is that it is a good straight ahead superhero movie. Like it does everything you need. It does all the origin story beats you need to do for an origin story superhero movie. At the same time, it's playing with it and commenting on it. Like the whole intro sequence is like every time a new Spider-Man comes up, it's like, all right, you know the story. Like it's calling out that you know how an origin story works, but it uses that for dramatic effect. It's fucking so good.
And Nicolas Cage in there is just
Lord.
Yeah.
And again, the character animation of it is just like, it just looks so cool to look at him. All the performances are great. Yeah, the only two things that I was a little bit more down on this time than I was the first time I watched it is one, I wish that Spider-Gwen had more to do. I get that like she is a side character and she's like the meat of the story is the relationship between Peter and Miles. But it's like, it would be nice for her to have a little more to do. Fortunately, she's getting her own spinoff movie, so I'm like, cool, that's great. That's going to give me everything I need. And the fact that on rewatch, the references and the callbacks to other Spider-Man and other superhero movies, they were super useful and valuable the first time I saw it, particularly because it kind of has to do the work, similar to like Force Awakens, of, hey, we get it. We're going to play with this a lot, but just so you know, we've done our homework. We understand it. We're fans. We're putting in all these references, I think is really important for the first time that you watch through, especially if you are a Spider-Man fan. On the second watch, I was like, okay, I don't need as many references to like the Raimi Spider-Man movies. But,
sure. Yeah. It was a very fun, great movie all around.
Yeah. And then my number one, which again, I could flip-flop with Spiderverse any day of the week, that I also rewatched is The Incredibles. I think The Incredibles
why did I not think about that?
It just like every single beat of that movie fucking nails it. It's the best Fantastic Four movie we've ever gotten, which is a low bar, given the other ones are terrible, but impressive given this isn't a Fantastic Four movie. Like every character's powers are perfectly matched to their story and the like struggle that they're going through. It's like again, comments on and plays with superhero tropes and stuff like that while still being an incredible superhero movie. Pun, I guess, not intended. And like the performances are so good in it. It's just and the action scenes, similar with Spider-Verse and Dark Knight and any of these, which I do think is important for if you're doing a like real superhero movie and not like just a parody of a superhero movie. Like you have to have fucking good action scenes, and like those fight sequences in The Incredibles are just like it's clean and clever. It's especially the moments where it's that thing which I guess a lot of Pixar movies have, but where every single thing that you set up gets paid off later, and even true in those fight scenes where it's like, the natural conclusion, like he can run really fast and he gets on the water and it turns out he can run in water and then he's running back and forth. And then like what happens when he figures out that like he's trapped between two places, he stops running and then he sinks and the people crash. And it's like every part of it just like meshes together so well. Incredibles fucking rules.
I gotta see that movie again now. Okay, I'll put that in my top 4 then at least.
Yeah, it's good. I had Sky High as my number 4, which is totally just a me pick. That's a 1 for me. It shouldn't be in anyone else's list, but I love it.
Should I see Sky High tonight? That's what I'll do.
I mean, I love it. It's like my other, like one of my favorite genres is the high school teen movie, and like that's teen comedy, and Sky High is just a really great teen comedy that happens to have superheroes in it. It's fun. Bruce Campbell's in it. As a coach that yells really loudly.
Okay.
Kurt Russell's very good as faux Superman. Any other stuff on superheroes? Superhero movies?
I don't think so.
Do we hit it? So Alex Wade, what makes a superhero movie?
Laser beams coming out of your butthole. Nothing else.
There you go. We got it in one. If you know what makes for a good superhero movie, and or if you have opinions on whether we should do a special episode on the 2020 film Doolittle starring Robert Downey Jr., you can get in touch with us via email at theawclub@gmail.com. That's theawclub@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet at us to do a special episode on the 2020 film Doolittle starring Robert Downey Jr. on Twitter at the AW Club. It's THEAWCLUB WCLUB. You can find this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts or wherever you're listening to it right now. But if you need any suggestions, that could be Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or Spotify. And you can also go to our website. That's theadub.club. It's theadub.club. There you can find our topics guide, which will have all the different things that you can click on to figure out what if there's a particular type of episode you want to listen to, like, say, I don't know, in the future, an episode about the 2020 film Doolittle starring Robert Downey Jr. You will be able to find that on our topics guide. And I believe that is everything.
We are playing a dangerous game of, do we want emails or, at least a single listener acknowledge us? Or do we want to watch the Dr. Dolittle film? And I'm not sure that's a bridge I want to cross.
Well, we've committed. So you know what you got to do. You know what you got to do, listening public.
Thanks. Head Up Club out.
Club out.
Yeah, I think I got to start watching more movies in general. I've been watching a lot of TV and like, I'm putting in too much filler, like.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I just can't seem to, like, I'll start a show and then I just can't watch past an episode or two, but I've been watching tons of movies.
I mean, I rewatched fucking West Wing and like, yeah, it was good, but I shouldn't be rewatching an 8-season show just to fucking kill time,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
The one show I have been watching, I've started to get into, though even that's been fits and starts, is I'm finally watching Sailor Moon.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, which I remembered like seeing a couple random episodes on like Toonami or whatever when I was a kid, but I never actually watched it.
I told you I finished up Avatar, right?
I don't know if you told me that, but I'm not surprised.
It's amazing. It's fantastic. And I've got my tattoo prepared. I just need to
hell yeah, dog,
get it to the damn tattoo person. But
yeah, I know. I'm trying to think. This has nothing to do with any of this. So maybe this will be a good like.
I mean, I feel like we're this is a good.
But I don't know. I'm trying to think. What I do want is whenever I do eventually move from Chicago, I want some sort of Chicago themed tattoo. And then, but I don't know. No, I don't. I've wanted to get a tattoo for a long time, but I've always been like choice paralysis on what is the actual thing. And so I want to get something Chicago related, but I don't know what yet.
Okay. Let's get a fucking fire, man.
Yeah. I could do a fire. I mean, it could be super fucking cliche and do the 4 stars of the Chicago flag.
I have this really cool fire symbol that I have. That you might want to. We could get matching tattoos. Oh my god.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Mine's for Avatar, but yours can be for Chicago.
It could be for the Chicago Fire. Yeah. One of the 4 stars. One of them is for the Chicago Fire. One of them's for the World Columbian Exposition, and I don't remember what the other 2 Chicago flag stars are for. I
understand. Maybe it's not. Maybe I like it. I like the fact that like it changes over time, but that's not something usually things do. Like the Union Jack has been the same for a while, I assume, right? Until they get another country added onto them. If like Puerto Rico becomes our 51st state, obviously,
we'll get a new flag.
Great. That makes sense.
Yeah, the historic events represented by the stars are the establishment of Fort Dearborn, which I guess is the thing that was where Chicago would then be founded, the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893, and the Century of Progress Exposition of 1933 to 34. And then the 2 blue bars, apparently the top bar is for the North Branch of the Chicago River, and the bottom bar is for the South Branch.
Okay, it's like what if the next big thing happens in Chicago? Like
they're
gonna put on another star.
Oh, interesting. And then the 3 white parts of it. The top one is for the north side, middle one is for the west side, and the bottom one's for the south side.
No east side. Oh, that's the.
And there's a lake.
That's a lake, isn't it?
Yeah, you see the Chicago flag is fucking everywhere around Chicago.
Yeah,
Like
I like that's
every
the one
bar's
flag
got
that
it.
I know. Like,
Yeah.
I know that one. And I know New Mexico's flag.
What's New Mexico? Let me Google.
It's like a circle with lines coming out of it on north, south, east, and west in like varying amounts.
Okay. Oh, it's a good flag.
I mean, that's mainly because I watched a lot of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul lately. But that's what I just finished up. Better Call Saul. Oh my god.
Oh, nice.
It's not done yet, but season 5 ended a month or two ago.
Yeah.
Very
additional stars have been proposed with varying degrees of seriousness. Some examples: Chicago's contribution to the nuclear age. A star was proposed in honor of Harold Washington, the first African American mayor of Chicago.
Okay.
1992 Chicago flood. We apparently bid to get the 2016 Summer Olympics, and so we would have added a flag if we had won that. Other sports-related suggestions including recognizing the Chicago Bulls' dominance of the NBA in the 90s, and a fifth star if the Chicago Cubs ever won the World Series. But we did win the World Series and then didn't do it. Hey, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot suggested Chicago's response to the COVID-19 pandemic could warrant adding a fifth star to the flag. So maybe we are living in the times that will give us another star.
Oh my god, that's fucking bullshit.
I mean, if the Chicago Fire, like, I feel
Fire,
like
yes.
it's not unreasonable to say the time when all of Chicago had to stay inside for 2 months, 2 to 3 months, could be a traumatic event to the level of.
And if that was unique to Chicago, then yeah, I'd be all for it. But since it's a fucking worldwide event, that's just like, hey, everyone did a great job. Look what Chicago did. Like, come on.
Yeah. And I mean, we've been doing a good job, I think, on all of the pandemicness and pandemic response, but it certainly hasn't been world unique in our abilities. We're not quite a Seattle.
Yeah.
But oh well. Any other flags you love?
Any what?
Any other flags you love?
Fucking American flag. Oh no, I have this actually navigator flag that's in my room. I forget about that. Yeah, it was I was a camp counselor. Well, why I always, you know that. Why the fuck would I say that?
Yeah,
you know that. There was a week called Navigators and Pioneers Week, which was red versus blue week basically, and every single activity like gave your team points for like the red team or the blue team, and everyone was like wearing red or blue clothing, and it's a very fun week. Although they did it during the wrong week this year, and like some of the campers didn't know this was red versus blue week, so they're like, why the fuck I don't want to be competing on every single fucking thing. Like, anyway, I got chosen to be captain one year, my final year actually. No, second to final year, and I was a blue team leader, and it was awesome. Nice. I was like basically the mascot for the blue team, of like 150 campers, and there was a flag that was made for our capture the flag game, and then at the end of the week I was like, I want it, and I took it, and I have it now.
Hell yeah, dog. All about theft of memory inducing memorabilia.
Fuck yeah. It was it's from my campers. Stole it from them. It was it's actually my friend Emma. Her campers made it.
Nice. Any other stuff on superheroes? Superhero movies?
I don't think so.